to Uncontrollable, the podcast where we break the stigma, get loud, and get real about youth mental health. Truth is that having mental health struggles isn't weird, unnatural, or something to be ashamed of. It means you're human. Mental health affects us all, directly or indirectly. You're not alone.
We're here to remind you that some things in life are out of your control, and that's okay. Sometimes you just have to embrace the chaos. Mental health doesn't have to be scary or heavy all the time. It can also be a very fun and relatable topic. This podcast is packed with stories, tools, and fresh ways to handle all the stuff that feels, well, uncontrollable.
Hi, I'm Madison Mays.
And I'm Sophia Lee.
Brought to you by Cloudcast Media.
Our goal is to eliminate the mystery and myths surrounding youth mental health and to answer your most intriguing questions.
So let's have some fun and explore the uncontrollable. Today we're here with Stan Collins, one of the co-founders of Youth Creating Change, who now works with the state of California as a suicide prevention specialist. Stan, how are you doing today?
I'm doing very well. How about you, Madison?
I'm doing great. Glad to have you here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
thank you for having me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so tell us a little bit about yourself and how did you get into your profession?
Oh, okay. It's gonna get weird, but let's go. So I got into this work by accident. When I was 14, a freshman in high school, I lost one of my best friends to suicide, and this was back in like the mid 90s. So this was at a time when like we didn't talk about mental health or suicide prevention. And it was years later where I just kind of, I heard about a program through my family about youth suicide prevention. And they said, hey, will you come check it out? And ended up bringing the program to my high school. Just thinking it was going to just be something that I could do to, help people out and, maybe create some conversations. And then a few years later, while I was in college, and then once I got through college, they asked me to be a part of the program. And here I am, 20 years later, not realizing that suicide prevention is a field that you can work in. I guess that's the short version of it, is that I just look back to my days as a younger youth and just think like, man, I wish we would have talked more about this.
Exactly. Yeah. And how do you think that your work that you've done with Youth Creating Change and the work that you're doing now with California is impacting kind of the conversations that we have in schools about suicide and mental health?
I hope there's some impact. I don't want to sound arrogant and say it's changed the whole direction of everything, but I think that from what I've seen in my work, it's cool to like see a sea change. Like I think a lot of people are talking different about it and realizing that suicide prevention, which starts with mental health in general, isn't something that we should do. It's something that we have to do. So I think that's the biggest difference. When I first got involved in this work, I'd go to hang out with some friends or whatever, and they'd be like, oh, what do you do? And I say I'd work in, mental health and suicide prevention, and like silence, like crickets. And now it's like, oh, that's great. So like just that like finger in the wind response is like going from like, oh, that's weird to, 20 years later, like, that's awesome. Let's talk about it. I think it has no credit to do with me, but just the way the world has shifted to realize that if you don't have mental health, you don't have too much else.
Right. I think it should be like, I'm glad it's being talked about more because we talked about it in some past episodes about how that kind of generational thing too, like depending on the era, how like we're slowly coming more and more up into like really accepting mental health. So now we're trying to get like those stereotypes fought about it and really defining what you said, like what suicide is, like how it happens and what kind of leads up to it.
And also like
and I think generational is definitely. Because I've spoken about this, but like it's a social justice issue. Like it's like one of the next phases of social justice is just like being able to talk about like where you're at, how are you, and being okay with not being okay, and like understanding that you don't just have to sit in the mud. Like there's people that can help.
Yeah. And this episode is really about talking to people about mental health, even if it's not just for yourself, but for your family or for friends. And it's not necessarily about how to make the conversations less awkward, because I think that the conversations are gonna have to be a little bit awkward. You know, you're gonna have to embrace it. You know, if you really care about that person. Do you have any advice for sort of starting a conversation about mental health with somebody that you're worried about?
Well, with respect, I'm going to challenge the premise of your question, which is that it's not awkward. Like it's not like we all think it's awkward, but it's not awkward. Like I want people to check on me, and it doesn't make me feel. They shouldn't feel weird for like I want people to love me enough to check on me. So I think that's something that we've kind of built up, and I mean again with respect. I think we've built up the awkwardness about mental health almost too much. Like, yeah, I want you to know that you can care about me, and I want you to know that I care about you. So I think the awkwardness is a little bit overblown in this situation. Like, yeah, like it's okay for you to check on me. It's okay. Like, it's actually your responsibility to check on me. And it's my responsibility to check on you. So like, again, like the whole awkward thing is like, get over it. Like just check in. We want people to know that I want people to know that they love me, because there's days where I doubt that I love myself. So like, I want there to be people out there that like, no, you're all right.
So how would you go about asking? Like, how do you really ask if someone's okay? Because I feel like that's like that might seem simple, but like when you ask someone, "Oh, how are you doing?" They're like, "Oh, I'm fine," and then you see them crying like 30 minutes later. Like, how do you? What's the best way to approach someone that you see struggling? And like, what do you do if
Well,
you don't believe they're fine?
I think there's a couple things. First, I've found that like, are you okay? To me, it sounds like I want you to say yes so I can bounce and do something else. So I've found more effectiveness in asking like, "Hey, how are you feeling?"
Mm.
And it's weird how words matter, but they do. So like, "Hey, how are you feeling today?" Or like, "Hey, I know you're struggling with this. What's going on?" So I think how you ask it, but I also think um, not just doing like a one. Like, don't just ask people one time. Like, hey, how are you feeling today? How are you feeling tomorrow? And that I think it's important. I think we kind of check in with people because we don't want to be awkward. And again, I don't mean to attack the previous question, but like,
No, it's good.
I think you gotta. There's a term I heard. I don't know who said it, but set the table often. Like set the table every day for people to not be okay. Because people might be great today, and then tomorrow, they have a breakup, they have job issues, financial issues, family issues. So how do you set the table every day for the people you love to not be okay?
Right. So even like how some people just aren't okay opening up. Like you'll be like, "Oh, how are you?" And they'll be like, "I'm fine."
Yeah.
So what do you think the best way to go around and to like leave them alone and just let it be, or like come back? Like, how do you think we should go about that?
I think just keep being present. Like, don't give up. Like if you ask them, "Hey, are you all right? How are you feeling?" They're like, "Oh, I'm fine. I'm fine," which is kind of like our society's way of saying like, "I don't know how to talk about this." Um, like, because if you're fine, you're not fine, right? Like if you're doing good, you'll be like, "Oh, I'm doing good." So I think just keep checking in. Be gently persistent is a term I like. Like just keep being there. But most importantly, just keep showing up. And then I think, again, going back to the awkward statement, like I think people don't want to be a bother. And I think we forget that one of the greatest honors we can have is to sit with somebody in the mud when they're not okay and when they're not fine.
I agree. So like you say, you work with the youth, right? So
Yeah.
like I know people have like I've had friends that were struggling too. Like, so when do you believe it's time to get their parents involved? This time to tell like maybe some counselors or whatever, and like and you're breaking their trust. Like, is it okay to break that trust? Like, oh, like no. because I have a story about, I think it was like sophomore year. This kid, he would sit there in class and say he wants to kill himself and say waste like every single day. And I'll ask his friends about it. I'll be like, oh, like you guys are just gonna like let him say that? Like he's kind of serious. They're like, oh no, he says stuff like that all the time.
Oh, what?
Right? Like they're like, oh. And I was like, and it kept bothering me. So like I kind of had to kind of break that trust a little bit and be like, yeah. And I had to tell a counselor or whatever. I told a counselor about like what he was saying and how he was feeling. And at first he wasn't the happiest about it, but like a month later he was like, it really did help because he really was on the brink and half had past attempts nobody knows about. So like, what do you say about other people that are afraid to break their friends' trust?
Well, I think there's a few things. First off, like, I don't think you're breaking somebody's trust, right? Like, it sounded like there's a lot of times where people are just reaching out for help and they're throwing out invitations for you to, hey, please check in with me because I don't know how to ask for help. So I think that's part one is a lot of people that are struggling. There's a really good organization called QPR, and they call them invitations. So I think part of it's about reframing. You're not breaking their trust. And also when it comes to talking to an adult, especially as a, in high school or middle school, whatever, as a minor, I think the other half of it is not about breaking trust, but how do you help build that trust? So one of the things I talk about or I try to share with people is that, all right, so let's just say like your example, somebody in your class, you kind of know, but you don't really know. Rather than just having a conversation, then going behind their back and saying, reporting it to a counselor, which in some circumstances totally warranted because you can't build that. But maybe, you could build trust and say, hey, I care about you. I love you. I don't know what it is. But also I can't do this by myself. So we need to talk to somebody, but who is that somebody for you? And I think one of the things we need to do with mental health, especially in suicide prevention, is empowering people a little bit more. Because like, especially when we're talking about the high school circumstance, like, oh, we need to talk to your counselor. Well, maybe they think their counselor smells weird or looks funny. So like, like maybe it's just not going to be a fit. So like, okay, we have to talk to somebody. Don't put this on me. I'm going to be here and I'm going to hold your hand through the whole thing. But who's the person you want to talk to? Like when I was in high school, I remember my math teacher was one of the people I would trust them with my life. And you would never think like, oh, the math teacher is the person that could talk to the student. But sometimes that's the person that begins the trust that begets the other things. So I think most importantly, we have to build the trust and then ask, what can I do to continue that trust? Because we talk about this always as like a violation of trust. And it's not that. It's just like, hey, I care about you. I want you to be here tomorrow. So how do I get you to sign up for you being here? Does that make sense?
That makes
Yeah,
sense.
I think that's a really good way of reframing it.
Right,
Then,
trying to build that trust, trying to get that establishment, because a lot of people are afraid to open up. Like, yeah, like you really, because I feel like even some people aren't like ready to open up, so you kind of just have to kind of like be subtle with it. Because like I also have a friend like that. She doesn't really like talking about her problems, even if I could see that's something.
A lot of friends like that.
Right?
It's like our whole generation.
Yeah, a lot of people don't like. They don't like really talking about it, or they'll like just cut you off. So what do you think to do? Like, oh, like when they genuinely just don't want to speak to you, you don't know, you kind of just don't, there's a problem.
Okay, so same thing. I'll put it back on you a little bit. Why would somebody not want to talk to you about their issues?
True.
Because they probably have them.
Probably right.
Probably have them. Probably don't.
Probably just don't. That trust might not be there, right? Or it
Well,
might.
No. I'm going to challenge you guys. Take it deeper. Like the trust might not be there.
Well,
because they might be scared of who you're going to tell.
They might be scared of who are tell, or they might be embarrassed of the story too.
Have shame.
They have a lot of shame within the story because I just have so many stories with my friend about this. Right, she had like an incident because she would tell us everything, right? But like it was kind of a switch in her energy, and we knew there was something wrong, but she just wouldn't. She just genuinely wouldn't say anything about it. We kept trying to push her, like, okay. She would get mad, irritated, go off. So we're like, okay, will leave it until like it had got so bad until it was like more personal matters, but she had to get a restraining order on someone. And I think she was more so ashamed of what led up to the events happening, because even when she still didn't really want to say what happened, like she trusted us with everything else,
Yeah.
but the specific matter she just like she couldn't bring herself to put it into words what actually happened. But she was like,
Yeah.
"Be
Okay. So shame. So you talk about restraining order, maybe frustration. Like she's tried everything. So like, why should she try this with you? Because it's going to end up in the same thing. Frustration in that regard. Burden. Like she feels like maybe she's already burdened you. Like, hey, I've already bothered you with this so many times, and I keep coming in the same. Because when your mental health is struggling, like we go in circles, right? Like that's why support systems are so important. So I guess before to go back to your initial question, like what do you do when somebody says like I'm fine, or what do I do, like, or you don't have anything to do? I think a lot of times we put that on we we put it on the person, like why don't they just tell us, right? But like there's tons of reasons. I feel ashamed, I'm embarrassed, I feel like a burden, I feel like I've tried everything, I've tried this with you. And so I think just understanding that part of it, that like more than likely this isn't the first time they've reached out for help. There are some people that like, I don't know how to ask for help, I don't know how to reach out for help. But I think by just understanding, like, there's been times in my life where I've given up on asking for help because I'm like, you guys just don't get it. Like, why would I keep asking you for help if you're just not listening? So I think part of it is, I don't want to say like victim blaming, but like we have to be more cautious of that, of like, instead of asking, why aren't they giving me the honest answer? Like, why would they not be comfortable to be honest with me about where they're at?
Mm-hmm. And then how do you?
Sorry, I feel like I'm challenging every question that you've asked.
That's kind of like what I was looking for, like kind of seeing more so on the person themselves, like why they're feeling. They can more. I think sometimes if we're trying to help someone, we kind of get like a little selfish. As they don't want to talk to me. Oh, they must think I'm being a bad friend. But we kind of really don't see it from their perspective. Like they just may not be ready to open up yet. They kind of just have to take a break for themselves. So
they might just be trying to survive.
They might just be trying to survive. Like we get so caught up, oh my gosh, like, oh, so if you don't like me, just be like that, just say that. But really that's just not the case. Mm-hmm. So I kind of love that.
I would just say, again, gently persistent, like check in, and if they're not ready, that's fine. But keep setting the table every day and say, hey, I'm still here and I love you, and whenever you're here and whenever you want, I'm still here.
And then do you ever think there's a moment where like if you feel like you've consistently tried putting in the effort, you've tried to get them help, you really know that they do need help, but they still aren't there yet in themselves, do you ever kind of supersede what they think they need right now and try to get them to the help if you know that something bad is going to happen to them?
Kind of like taking matters into your own hands.
Because I think the only time that I've ever done that is when my friend texted me and she was like, today's the day, and like I'm gonna kill myself, and then I had to call her mom. Not had to, but like I needed to call her mom. Like I needed to do that.
No, you're 100% in the right, especially when when it's very clear what's going on. And I would say, hopefully don't, and I'm not trying to shame you, Sophie, like don't wait for that either. Like as soon as your instincts, so the comparison I would use is like, when should you call 911? So I used to be an EMT. My family is law enforcement, whatever. So people would call me and they'd be like, hey, should I call 911? The second you think that you should call 911 is the moment you should call 911. Now, I'm not saying for mental health and suicide, you should call 911, but I'm just saying once your instinct tells you, I need to do something more than what I've been doing, like that's when you need to do that next level. So call the mom, talk to the counselor, especially in high school, like you can refer a student for a check-in, with being anonymous and just saying, hey, I'm worried about this person, like upstream, like something's going down, can you check in with this person? But it's one of the most cliche things that has ever been said, but I'd rather lose the friendship than lose the friend. Most of the time, like people in the long run come back and say thank you, so, but once like threat of life, thoughts of suicide are present, and if they're not willing to acknowledge them, absolutely, you need to. There's a gray area where like I'm struggling, but I don't want to talk to my parents, because there's also times when people are struggling with their mental health and they don't want to. Their parents are either the cause or even sometimes the barrier, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I do a lot of trainings with school staff with which they ask a very similar question, like, hey, if I have a student tell me they're thinking about suicide, does that mean that I have to give them all the other information? For example, let's say a very closeted family, but the student comes out, right? Or with either gender, sexual identity, whatever it is, but they're also having thoughts of suicide. The school counselor is required by law to tell the family that they're thinking about suicide. That doesn't mean they have to give all the other stuff. So it's like, what information is pertinent to this conversation versus what is not? Because thoughts of suicide need to be worked through, but do I need to know, or do all the people need to know all the the dirty details? I would say probably not. Like, the most important thing is that we want to understand, like, what hurts and why does it hurt and how can I help it not hurt.
So kind of going back a little bit to talking about help and really supporting your friends, like, how do you know when you're pushing your friends towards help or if you're pushing them away? Like, is there a boundary of when I should be trying to help them or just being there to support?
I don't know. That's a tough one. Again, I think I go back to like, just keep showing up, keep bringing it up, but also like, sometimes as hard as it is, like, we need to let people hurt a little bit. If they're not, that's one thing I think that we misunderstand, is that people won't accept help unless they want to get help. And we push ourselves into that space. And so it's not so much about like forcing them to get help. It's about helping them to understand, that they need help. And more than likely, they probably already understand that. But again, acknowledging the reasons. Why wouldn't they accept it? Like, it's so easy to get negative and be like, no, I'm already a mess. I've messed up this one time and therefore I'll be a mess forever. So I think just being around, showing love, helps people to understand that they deserve love. So I think that's part of it. But there's also a time where, like we talked about, you need to bring in other people. There's also a time where you need to step away. It's hard. It's one of the hardest things I've ever had to do in my life. But there's times where people just won't accept help. And I've gone down with the sinking ship for a little while with them. So I think it's a fine line, and I don't think there's like a blanket statement, like, how do you know if you're pushing too hard? I think you trust your instincts. You do it with respect. You try to get them to have ownership, accountability about it. But at some point, if they're not going to accept help and you feel like you're pushing them away, then maybe, again, once you have that thought, then maybe you should step away.
Another question is, do you have any direct experience of living with someone struggling with mental health issues? And like, if so, how did you handle that?
I do, including myself. I think patience, understanding, doing research. But going back kind of the previous comment, I think the best thing, aside from being understanding, being knowledgeable so that you understand, like, NAMI has this great program. It's called Family to Family, where you learn about like some of the struggles that other people, so say you have a partner, a family member, child, parent, whatever, who's struggling with mental health, they kind of talk you through those emotions. Because if you're like really like deeply involved as a caretaker, like, there's days when you're frustrated, there's days when you're exhausted, and that doesn't mean you're a bad person. So I think that's part of it. I think the other part of it is taking care of yourself, like realizing, again, super cliche. When you're on the plane, they say, put your mask on before you put it on the person next to you. Like, if we're not here to take care of ourselves and then we're not going to be here to take care of the people the next day. But I think through all this, like, I think there are so many options for people to get help. There's so many people that want to help. I think to some degree, and this isn't to shame people, like we need to have more accountability for our own wellness. Like we need to be willing. Like I see a therapist. I think everybody should see a therapist like constantly. Now that being said, it's really hard and it's expensive and health insurance and all the issues, but I think we need to normalize, especially the world the way it is, that we're all going to need a little bit of help, and that's okay. That's fine. Did I even answer your question at all?
That did answer, I think that did answer it. Yeah, because I do know that a lot of people, like we kind of talked about it in different podcasts, like their mom had body issues, right? Like they or had like self-image issues and eating disorders, and like I see people talking about how that can necessarily affect them growing up, and sometimes they kind of end up like learn to adapt some of those like unhealthy skills too. So I think, like you said, just really addressing it, and I think it could take for like both parties to kind of be accountable to the fact that they're struggling. Because I know it's kind of hard for a lot of people to really say those words that they are struggling. It's like talking more about that, and that's why I think you said like knowledge, become more educated about it too.
Well, yeah, like if you understand, like for your example, like your mom's body issues or whatever, like to understand it, to be like, oh, this is wild over here, like, but this isn't normal. But also to understand like the parlay, like the trauma echo that comes through it. And again, to understand also, like, you're going to have so much perspective, especially if you're like in teenage years, young adult years, you're going to have so much perspective on who your parents are and where they were at the time. But that doesn't mean you need to wait for that. So understand it, but just because they, built you doesn't mean that they need to be a part of you, which I think there's a lot of, we talk about youth mental health struggling, but like there's a lot of adults that are struggling right now. A lot of people that are raising people that are having a hard time going to therapy and dealing with what they've been through. So I don't know. I think the sooner you start processing and doing the work, the better off you're going to be. Like I talk to youth all the time who have been through horrific stuff that, as rough as my childhood may have been, stuff that I could never understand. And, they're like, I'm so worried I'm going to be broken forever. And it's like, no, dude, you're going to be the person that's going to be kicking butt in a few years because you started early. A lot of people don't start doing work on themselves till they're 30, 40, 50, 60. If you start looking at yourself and exploring, what is life, why is life in your teens and 20s, you're going to be way ahead of the curve. So I have so much hope for your guys' generation because you guys are doing the work way before most of the other generations.
Mm-hmm. And kind of building on that, because sometimes youth, I know like sometimes my friends will be very knowledgeable about their own mental health and they can understand that they have a problem, but then their parents don't necessarily believe in mental health or won't necessarily provide the support or the therapy that they need. How do you think youth in that situation can sort of still find help for themselves?
Well, now more than ever, you have more options. So one, there's, I think a lot of youth don't understand by the time they're 12 or maybe 13. I apologize if I'm getting the age wrong. In California, you have a legal right to seek mental health support regardless. You don't need a parent permission to do that. And I think and now that doesn't mean there's not other complications with it. Financing, shame, punishment. I'm not saying that eliminates all the things, but I think a lot of youth don't understand that they have a right to mental health care at a younger age than we would expect. You don't have to wait till you're 18. I think the other part of it is there's a lot of resources out there. Like I think most youth, when they talk to a counselor at school, a mental health professional at school, automatically it's going to signal to their parents or their guardians, caregivers, whatever the title is. And a lot of times, again, unless there's risk of harm to themselves or others, those people don't need to be involved. And so I think a lot of times they say the average time for someone who's struggling with mental health symptoms reaches out for help is anywhere from 8 to 12 years. And those 8 to 12 years are hugely significant loss of time or waste of time, whatever. So I think empowering people to know their legal rights, like literally their legal rights, that I have permission legally to talk to a mental health professional. But also you have awesome resources like the Saluna app and some of the other things out there. You have more access to information about mental health right now than ever before. You also have a community of people in your age group that are more understanding, more sympathetic, and more importantly, empathetic. So I think if I were dealing with the things that I was dealing with when I was, in high school, I hope that I would have the courage to engage and use the resources that are available.
Yeah, and speaking to like what you were dealing with in high school, what is something that you would try to tell your past self? Like, what advice would you give them to like keep trying, like through all your mental health?
It's going to be okay. Like, it's going to be okay. And I still, my 5 years from now, I'll tell me right now, it's going to be okay. Like, it's all right. Like, it's awful. And it doesn't mean it doesn't hurt. Doesn't mean it doesn't suck, but it's going to be okay. And I think, every bad thing I've ever been through, has made me who I am. When we regret the past, we regret who we are. And again, that's not to wish that awful things didn't happen. I wish my parents didn't go through a divorce. I wish I wasn't a victim of abuse. I wish all these things, but here I am, so it's going to be okay. Like, take a breath, stick to the people that love you, stick to the people that care about you. But yeah, it's going to be okay.
I love that, the stick by too. I try to remember that stuff. Like stuff is like only momentary. Like, it's temporary. Like, it's gonna be another day, a brand new start. It's always gonna be better than another day. So like, it's gonna be okay. It's a good one.
Yeah, and it sounds dismissive. Like, oh, it's going to be fine. It's not. It's going to be fine. It is going to be okay though. Like, it's like, yeah, you might eat ramen in the rain for the next few years. You might, it's going to hurt, but it's going to be okay.
Like that. We just have a couple more questions for you too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let me see. Gosh, I was so lost in the it's gonna be okay, because that really hit. But let me see. Oh, this is a good one. I remember. So kind of, I know a lot of friends of mine, but also youth in general, they worry about telling their parents about this. They worry about what they're gonna say. But a lot of the times, the parents, even if they thought at first they wouldn't be accepting, like, at the end of the day, that's their kid. They would really fight for you. They love you so much. And they're like, okay, even if maybe before I didn't believe in mental health issues, maybe if I don't really understand it right now, I'm still going to support them. So what advice do you have for people in that situation who want to come from a place of support and empathy, but they aren't really sure how to talk about it, they aren't really sure what it is, and they don't want to come off as having stigma? They just really don't know what to say.
So you're talking about from like the parent, caregiver, guardian perspective? Like, what would I tell them?
Usually.
I think I don't know. I don't think I can answer that without answering the other part. So a friend of mine who lost his son to suicide, after, he's given a beautiful TED talk about like his experience in that. But one of the things he talked about is he was so mad after he lost his son. Like, why didn't you talk to me? Why didn't you tell me? And then he finally came to realize, like, he was like trying to be like the man and the head of the household. And he's like, well, I never let you know when I was having a bad day. Like, I never gave you permission to have a bad day because I was always fine. Even though he admits, like, I wasn't fine. I was stressed about keeping the house or putting food on the table and this and that. I think as much as, adults doubt youth, I think a youth doubt adults, as far as their capacity. And I mean, the reality is, like, yeah, the struggles are different, but they probably struggled with insecurities and stress and where am I going to be? Now, granted, the world's a whole different place than it was, one or especially 2 generations ago. But I think for youth, like, give them a little more credit. If we're asking them to give us credit, maybe we should give them a little more credit. Because I've heard a lot of beautiful stories about, like, just at the Directing Change award ceremony this year, there was a young lady who was part of a film, opened up about her personal experience. She's Latina, second generation, thought her parents would never speak to her again. And instead it changed the whole dynamic. So um, maybe sometimes we have to give them a little space to, yeah. So, okay, sorry, I'll keep talking for one more second, but to think back, so I asked you earlier, why would somebody not open up about what they're struggling with? Why would a parent, caregiver, guardian not always receive that information in a great way? Like, what are some of the reasons? You're my mom, you're my dad, you're my, surrogate mother, you're my foster mother. If I came to you and said I'm struggling with my mental health, what would be some of the concerns you would initially have with me opening up about that?
I feel like I wouldn't know what to do because I know, like you said, like growing up, there was way less mental health resources then as there are now, and like
Okay,
yeah, so I think it's more of a generational thing because, like, my grandparents, well, they've gotten more open to it, right? But even when we talk about therapy, they're like, oh, like, what is it for, right? Like, what's the point? If you have people you could talk to, everyone has someone to trust. Like, a lot of it's like more so like, especially like cultural beliefs in a lot of cultures. So I feel like that probably would be ingrained. But I would still be open to understanding, but I would be like a little hesitant, like, oh, you're telling me you're feeling all these ways of sadness. And especially, I feel like a lot of people, like, they'll give their child the best life they have. So for a kid to be like, oh, like, I'm unhappy, I feel like they'll see us as that's a slap in the face to them.
Yeah, like being ungrateful.
But they're not going to say that, but that just be like the emotions they're feeling to the part where it can maybe cause the adult just to be like, I need to really think about what's wrong.
Okay, so one would be like not having awareness of the resources. You talked about cultural stuff, which is totally reasonable. Talked about being ungrateful, but could the ungrateful part be like what, as a parent, from the parent perspective, wait, I fed you, I put a roof over your head.
Right.
How was I not good enough? So like maybe there's also shame on the parent perspective. Like, so when we say like, oh, it's just culture, it's just stigma, it's like to have, I'm just throwing this out there as an option. If a parent has a youth who they provided for, they never abused, they cared for, and they say, hey, I'm having thoughts of suicide, again, with lack of understanding and education, might it also be a possibility that they feel shame, not because they're embarrassed of the youth, but because they're embarrassed, like, how did I fail? How did I screw up? I thought I was doing good. And so I think that we forget about that part of it, that like there's shame on both sides, right? There's shame of I don't want to be a burden. There's shame of like, wait, I thought I was doing good. And so I think both sides of the equation, like people are, like you said, Sophie, like people are going to be more often than not, people are going to be more understanding than we expect them to be, in my experience. Yeah, there are times where parents aren't receptive, and that's a situation of neglect, and that's where we really need to bring in other resources. But I think a lot of the times we need to ask the question like, wait, why isn't this person responding the way I expected them to? Because maybe they went to their parents when they were kids and asked about like, hey, I'm having issues, and they got abused because of it. So maybe that's sitting on the parent. And I'm not giving excuses for parents and guardians that don't support. I'm just kind of like, I think the more we think about like walking in a mile in the other person's shoes, even if that's your parents, and also acknowledging your parents aren't perfect, they're doing the best they can. So I don't know. Again, I'm not trying to diminish the struggles.
I think especially like how we talked about like how youth really not wanting to talk to their parents or being afraid. I think it genuinely does come from just a lack of understanding on both parts. Because I feel like I feel like they are right to be like curious. Like I felt like I've done all this to raise you, or I've done what I can, and now you're having problems. I just feel like they just have to be open to like the kid telling them why, not be so closed off. It has to be that general bond and that built of mutual communication and understanding.
Yeah, and you can put a roof and feed the food, but mental health is different. Like you can have all the necessities of life and still be sad. And that's what we hear. I talk to youth, and that's something I look back to my struggles in high school. Yeah, my parents went through a divorce, but that's by no means like the most traumatic experience somebody in their youth went through. But for me, it was devastating. But my parents were still like, well, you have a bed, you have food. but it turned my world upside down. So it's okay outside of all the necessities to just be having a hard time, or even if the family situation is perfect, you have loving parents. It's okay to have mental health issues. It's okay. Like, you can still have depression and live in like the white picket fence. Like that, those are not mutually exclusive.
I agree. Thank you.
Mhm.
I feel like that's really answered it around, like that mutual understanding and like acceptance that it's
Yeah.
okay to struggle. But yeah, I think that ties us out. I really enjoyed this interview. I really
Mhm.
glad we kind of get like different perspectives I haven't really thought about. I haven't really focused on the adults aspects. You kind of like opened that up to me some more
Yeah.
too.
And
But-
like sometimes it's so confusing because it's such a complex situation on all sides. You just really don't know what to do, especially as a kid when maybe you haven't really had really emotional conversations yet. And then you need to struggle with like either your own mental health or helping a friend. So yeah, thank you so much, because I feel like a lot of this stuff, these are all questions that I asked myself when I was growing up and I didn't know what to do. So thank you so much.
Dude, I'm still growing up. You're still growing up. We're all still growing up. Like, and that's the other part of it, is like our parents, our guardians, our caregivers, like they're still figuring it out too. Like, everybody's faking it until they make it. So, again, I think the most important thing is just set the table every day, like create the space. And there's a lot of youth. And that being said, there's a lot of youth out there who wish the adults in their life could act more like adults. And to those who are listening and hear this, sometimes you just have to accept that's not going to happen, and you got to find your own way and figure out your own resources and listen to podcasts like this and talk to the adults. Like one of my people who saved my life is Mrs. Barker Ball. Like, she was the one person that I was like, I'm safe here. So try to find where you're safe, but again, it's going to be okay.
Yes, it's going to be okay. Remember, it's going to be okay. So, once again, I'm Madison Mays.
And I'm Sophia Lee.
Brought to you by Cloudcast Media.
Today we talked with Stan Collins about how to deal with talking about mental health, family members with mental health.
Right, like how to really like open up and like really introducing like family and friends to it. Mm-hmm. So we hope you have fun, and remember, don't be afraid to explore the uncontrollable.